Pompeo's push to fire watchdog focuses attention on his transparency record. Washington Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's push to fire the Inspector General, reportedly looking into his actions at the oldest U.S. cabinet agency, has refocused scrutiny of the top U.S. diplomat's transparency record after just over 2 years in the job. Ethics watchdog State Pompeo, who came to prominence in Congress through his dogged pursuit of Hillary Clinton's State Department after the deaths of 4 Americans in Benghazi, Libya, in 2012, has not practiced what he preached before taking the Secretary of State job. Pompeo refused to go into broader detail about his push to fire his agency's independent watchdog, the latest instance of the top U.S. diplomat shirking questions, as he did for much of the impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump, or offering incomplete or changing answers, as in the aftermath of the deadly strike on an Iranian commander earlier this year. He has a long history in the job of eschewing holding himself to account, to accountability, to thinking that he and his decisions are somehow above scrutiny, said John Kirby, a former State Department spokesperson under President Barack Obama, and a CNN analyst. The timing of Inspector General Steve Linick's firing is incredibly problematic, said Austin Evers, executive director of American Oversight, a nonpartisan ethics watchdog group. While it's not clear yet why Pompeo asked Trump to remove the independent watchdog, and the secretary refused to explain in a Wednesday press briefing, Evers said, "I think we can have confidence that the president and Secretary Pompeo were not trying to get greater transparency or accountability." Linick is the 4th independent watchdog Trump has fired since the Republican-controlled Senate acquitted him in February of charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. "It is the least transparent administration in memory," said Nicholas Burns, a retired career Foreign Service officer who served as the 3rd highest-ranked official at the State Department during the administration of George W. Bush. He noted that the role was created to ensure that government employees at every level, from the cabinet secretary to the lowest-ranking official, are accountable to the law, to Congress and to the American public. CNN has reached out to the State Department for comment. Firing the watchdog, Evers noted that the issues that the Inspector General was reportedly investigating go back a long way, adding that problems with Pompeo and transparency at the State Department have been pretty much continuous since he arrived in April 2018. The office led by Linick was purportedly investigating whether the Trump administration illegally pushed through Saudi arms sales in circumvention of Congress by declaring an emergency that enabled them to sidestep the law, and also whether the top U.S. diplomat had misused staff for personal errands. Pompeo told the Washington Post that he recommended Linick's removal because the independent watchdog was undermining the department and wasn't performing in a way that the top U.S. diplomat wanted him to. He did not go into details about what specifically displeased him about Linick's job performance. Pompeo disputed the idea that his recommendation to fire Linick was retaliatory, claiming he was unaware that he was under investigation by the Office of Inspector General. On Wednesday, Pompeo again refused to offer specific details to explain Linick's ouster, but noted he should have done it some time ago. Senator Robert Menendez, ranking member of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, and Representative Eliot Engel, chairman of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, launched an investigation into Linick's firing, giving the administration until May 22 to turn over all records related to the removal. Pompeo did not respond when asked directly on Wednesday if he intends to comply. "There have obviously been a number of IGs that have been removed, but this one, I really do think, is kind of the 4-alarm fire for Congress, that if they don't step up in a more significant way than they have, I really just don't know how the IG system can effectively function," Mandy Smithberger of the Project on Government Oversight told CNN. "Unfortunately, it seems to be throughout the administration that they don't understand the importance of Congress as a co-equal branch," she noted. "And if the removal of Linick is proper, there shouldn't be anything to hide." Fighting congressional oversight. The former Kansas lawmaker has repeatedly clashed with Congress over their requests for explanations and demands to conduct oversight, with lawmakers repeatedly complaining that the secretary has slow-walked legally mandated documents and witnesses. The State Department has effectively blocked all forms of accountability when it comes to congressional oversight, said Evers of American Oversight. They refuse to comply with any of the impeachment inquiry and, according to Chairman Engel, have largely ignored all other oversight requests. Pompeo's State Department largely stonewalled House Democrats during their impeachment inquiry into Trump. Attempts to block department officials from hearings with congressional investigators led most to testify under subpoena. The top U.S. diplomat attempted to obfuscate his role in the matter that led to the impeachment of the 45th president, largely dodging and dismissing questions about his knowledge of key events in the Ukraine saga and his presence during a pivotal phone call between the president and Ukraine's new leader. Retired U.S. Ambassador and career Foreign Service officer James Melville said that the administration's treatment of Congress is a horrible example for all of us who love our democracy. The role of Congress in oversight and accountability is essential to the smooth functioning of our government and our system, he said. And the contempt that Pompeo shows or Trump shows by not responding to subpoenas, in Pompeo's case by not appearing to testify and defend his record when it's legitimately called into question, just undermines the law and democracy. And it's just terrible, Melville told CNN. Shifting policy explanations. The top U.S. diplomat has offered shifting or vague public explanations to justify policy decisions in some of his boldest assertions about U.S. adversaries, most recently walking back accusations that the coronavirus pandemic began in a Chinese lab. While the administration has ratcheted up tensions with China with its accusation, it came close to triggering a major conflict with Iran after the deadly strike against Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani, which Pompeo offered a variety of explanations to justify. Pompeo said the killing of the Iranian general was in response to an imminent threat to Americans, even as diplomatic security in the region reported no immediate danger. He later said they didn't know precisely when or precisely where the imminent attacks were being plotted. A classified briefing to Congress from Pompeo, Defense Secretary Mark Esper, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley, CIA Director Gina Haspel, and then Acting Director of National Intelligence Joseph McGuire left lawmakers on both sides of the aisle frustrated and dissatisfied. There was no specific information given to us of a specific attack. Generality, stuff that you read in the newspaper. I didn't learn anything in the hearing that I hadn't seen in a newspaper already, Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky said following a January 8 briefing. Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah said after the briefing that it was the worst briefing I've had on a military issue during his 9 years in the Senate. I walk away unsatisfied on the key questions that I went into this briefing with, said Menendez, the top Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. It makes me concerned that we cannot have clarity on those key questions, imminency, target, all of those things. In an appearance before the House in late February, Pompeo was again pressed on the matter, with Representative Abigail Spanberger, a Democrat from Virginia, citing Pompeo's own comments about an imminent threat and noting the fact that a White House report sent to Congress outlining the legal rationale for the operation did not include the phrase, "Your own report directly contradicts what you and the president told the American people over and over. You said there were imminent threats to American lives. And that's not true. And when the administration was constrained by the law to tell the truth, you abandoned the talking points," she added. Pompeo pushed back on Spanberger's assertion that administration officials failed to provide lawmakers with any evidence of an imminent threat in classified briefings. "We absolutely did," he said. Saudi Arabia. Pompeo has also reportedly stymied oversight within his own department, refusing to sit for an interview as part of the now-fired Inspector General's investigation into the administration's emergency declaration to expedite arms sales to Saudi Arabia, a move strongly opposed by both parties in Congress. According to the New York Times, the top U.S. diplomat answered written questions on the probe. On Wednesday, Pompeo said he had answered written questions with respect to a particular investigation, but did not explicitly say which one. "I don't know the scope. I don't know the nature of that investigation, other than what I would have seen from the nature of the questions that I was presented. I did what was right," he said. Pompeo's transparency on Saudi Arabia, a political priority for Trump, has been an issue before, particularly surrounding the events and aftermath of the kingdom's murder of journalist and U.S. resident Jamal Khashoggi. Following Khashoggi's murder in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in early October 2018, Pompeo used the secrecy surrounding matters of intelligence to largely divert discussion around U.S. conclusions on the matter. In December 2018, pressed about the CIA assessment that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman personally ordered Khashoggi's death, the top U.S. diplomat claimed to CNN's Wolf Blitzer there was no direct evidence linking him to the journalist's murder, but added, "I can't comment on intelligence matters or CIA conclusions. I didn't do it when I was director. I'm not going to do it now." secret stops and political ambitions. The secretary's transparency about his travel overseas and domestically has also come into question. Amid speculation about Pompeo's political future, meetings with political donors or important domestic constituencies have been excluded from the manifest that is given to traveling press who are charged with tracking his work. In London in December 2019, for example, Pompeo attended an off-the-books, sit-down meeting with a conservative group that included a small number of wealthy Republican donors. In Florida, according to the Tampa Bay Times, Pompeo reportedly made a stop at the politically powerful retirement community called the Villages, which was not disclosed on his public schedule. The top U.S. diplomat has also made frequent trips to his home state of Kansas, at least 4 in 2019. Given the swirl of speculation about Mr. Pompeo's potential run for Senate, which existed over the last several months, given that public discussion and debate, I think it was more incumbent upon him to be even more forthcoming about why he was traveling domestically, what the purpose was, and what he was trying to get out of it. I don't think it helped him that so many of the trips were to his home state of Kansas, Kirby, the former spokesperson, said. It is incumbent upon you to make sure you square that with the press that are covering the State Department and own up to it, hold yourself accountable to that, be as transparent as possible so that you remove the suspicions that that particular meeting and other meetings like that have now engendered, he noted. And ditching the press only makes it that much more suspicious and only raises that many more questions. The sometimes blurry line between Pompeo's personal interests and his duties as secretary has also raised questions, prompting Linick to investigate the secretary's alleged use of government resources. Potential misuse of taxpayer resources. Pompeo has downplayed the reported IG inquiries and dismissed the idea that he recommended Linick's firing as a form of retaliation. I have no sense of what investigations were taking place inside the Inspector General's office, he said Wednesday. Couldn't possibly have retaliated for all the things I've seen, the various stories that, like, someone was walking my dog to sell arms to my dry cleaner. CNN reported last summer that Democrats on a key House congressional committee were investigating allegations from a whistleblower within the State Department about Pompeo and his family's use of a taxpayer-funded diplomatic security detail. Questions also remain about Pompeo's wife, Susan, whose active role at both the State Department and CIA had ruffled feathers. While her duties aren't official or clear, Pompeo has described her as force multiplier. Pompeo has in the past described Susan Pompeo's travels as working trips, and a State Department spokesperson previously told CNN that they comply with department regulations. Linick may have been looking into private, elite dinners the secretary and his wife have held in the sumptuous ceremonial rooms at the State Department. Lawmakers have begun to look closely at these Madison dinners, as Pompeo called them, and two sources tell CNN that Linick had recently asked the State Department Protocol Office about the semi-regular events. NBC News was first to report that concerns have been raised about the dinners. Click subscribe to receive the latest news.